Good morning. Welcome to the Celtic Way morning briefing live. It's Tuesday, April the 11th. I'm Tony Haggerty at Haggerty10 Twitter handle, as you can all see, and I'm joined today by Sean Martin at Sean Martin TCW on the Twitter handle. Good morning, Sean. How are you?
I'm all right, Tony. Aye, a lot's happened since that episode yesterday, innit?
The fallout continues. I'm speaking from the nuclear bunker here in East Kilbride. So yes, here we are. We'll talk about that in a couple of seconds. But first and foremost, draw your attention to the ticker tape running along the bottom. We thank everybody that's already subscribed to the Celtic Way, and we urge those that haven't to click that button and subscribe to the Celtic Way website and support top quality football journalism covering the club you love. And it'll cost you £2 for 2 months. That's £2 for 2 months for unlimited access to everything on the site by clicking a button www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. That's www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. And we also say thank you to SENECA, and everybody knows that the Celtic Way morning briefing is now sponsored by SENECA Medical Group, and SENECA are the #1 hair transplant company in Europe, and they offer innovative hair restoration treatments, and you can find out more about SENECA via the links in the description of this video. So, Sean.
So, Tony.
3 words. Kevin and Clancy. Discuss. Mother Studies, 30 marks, essay, or whatever you want, or university thesis. We could go forever on Kevin Clancy. And the fallout from Saturday's derby, which Celtic won 3-2 to go 12 points clear of Rangers. Now, there was 2 statements issued yesterday, wasn't there? One from the SFA and one from Rangers. And the subject matter being the contentious or not contentious, wonder whether you see it, Alfredo Morelos goal or non-goal that was given as a foul by Kevin Clancy, and Rangers wrote a letter to the SFA for an explanation of that, and the SFA responded in kind with their explanation. So, Sean, you're going to read both of those statements for anyone that didn't hear or read any of these.
I've actually got 3, because there was the SFA, there was the Scottish the Referees Association, and then there was Rangers. But I'll start with the SFA, which is signed from the Chief Executive Ian Maxwell, but essentially it's just talking for the whole organisation. He said that the nature of the messages that were sent to Kevin Clancy goes way beyond criticism of performance and perceived decision making. He goes on to say that some are potentially criminal in nature and include threats and abuse towards Kevin Clancy and his family. He says that the SFA have referred the correspondence to the police and condemned the behaviour in the strongest possible terms, as well as the posting of his personal details online with the sole purpose, he says, of causing distress. Later on in the statement, he says, we cannot allow a situation to develop where a referee's privacy and safety and those of his family are compromised. Tony, I take it both of us and everybody else in the comments will totally agree with that. I think it's a natural statement for the SFA to have made.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah. I mean, that is, it's pretty abhorrent that a referee is getting these kind of messages, and and members of his family and stuff like that are under scrutiny too, and personal details coming out. I mean, Andrew Galea says it in one word there. It is disgraceful. It's terrible behaviour, and it's not welcome in any shape or form, is it?
No, it is not. And the SSFRA that represents referees, they released a statement saying that they condemned the wholly unacceptable level of abuse directed towards Kevin Clancy, and they went on to say that referees are not immune from criticism, and they accept that there will always be legitimate debate on subjective decision making. However, when this becomes targeted threats and abuse impacting on personal and professional lives, it clearly crosses the line. And again, nothing you can really say that's fair enough. And I know the two of us were kind of taken aback a wee bit, Tony, by what came out yesterday that was happening. The details getting leaked, abuse, threats, all of it, just totally and just unacceptable.
Oh, it's unacceptable at any level.
And that's from 2 people who sat here yesterday and criticised him. There's a difference, as the association said there, there's a difference between a critique and criticism and just crossing that threshold into threats and abuse, and something that, as the SFA says, they felt had to be raised with the police.
Sean, as a football supporter, I've been miffed by many a refereeing decision, and I've felt, felt wronged on many an occasion. But I've never felt the need to want to send them personal abuse or, try and dig up their personal details. You accept that part of life is to err as human, and that you have to take your dumps and sup it up. It's no great. You don't enjoy it, and especially when you feel, they've been on a particularly the wrong end of a bad decision. But that's life. That's what happens in football. Some you win, some you lose type thing, and you get them or you don't get them. And I don't remember being. I mean, I remember being annoyed, but I don't remember being apoplectic and wanting to take it further. You seethe and you rage for. I don't know how long you seethe and rage for if it goes against you, Sean. But I think you get a good 15, 20 minutes, half an hour, and then reality kicks in. You think, okay, there's not a damn thing you can do about it. And nothing will change it. So I also don't understand writing to the SFA for explanation.
We'll get to that. Yeah.
So.
Aye, that leads us on to the Rangers statement, because that was the last of the statements to come out yesterday, I think. And their statement said, Rangers condemns in the strongest terms any abuse of match officials. We're all passionate about our game, but targeted personal abuse of referees cannot be tolerated. That is the sum total of the Kevin Clancy stuff. They then move swiftly on to the club can confirm that the Scottish FA has responded with regards to the disallowed Alfredo Morelos goal, with the response claiming the correct decision was taken. The club is astonished by this, especially given most observers, including former referees and former players, could see no issue with the goal standing. They then say this comes following a weekend in England where PGMOL have offered an apology to Brighton and Hove Albion for the non-award of a penalty in their match with Tottenham, alongside a pledge to review the incident. They round it off by saying, while an apology does not alter the outcome of a match, such responsibility and openness would be welcome in Scotland. So, Tony, you've kind of touched on some of it there, but give me your thoughts on that, if you will, the Kevin Clancy abuse and the three responses to it.
I'm astonished that they're astonished that the SFA have written back to them to say the correct decision was called. So why are they demanding an apology for a decision which was, which is one of the few that Kevin Clancy actually got right on Saturday? Let's be honest, you spoke about that yesterday, critiqued his performance. So I can't understand why you want an apology for something like that. And as I say, I am astonished that they used the word astonished. What did they think the SFA would say to them? And I don't know. Where are we going with all of this, Sean? What's happening? I mean, you asked me to write the other week, and we narrowed it down to 3 VAR decisions that have gone against Celtic, and off the top of our heads, we came up with about 10, didn't we?
Yep.
Since VAR's been introduced. Now, I don't know, because my job is to watch Celtic games every week, but from what I'm led to believe and for social media, is this the first major contentious decision that has gone against? If it's major and contentious, I couch that in quotation marks, that's gone against Rangers this season, and that's the reaction. They're talking about a club that's not had a penalty against them for a while and not had a man sent off. Don't know the actual stats, but it's pretty lengthy, isn't it? And then there's a right call made, but they're up in arms. And we've everybody's reviewed the footage. So the former ref they're talking about is Dermot Gallagher, who said Celtic got lucky. And then the former players they're clearly talking about are Kenny Miller and Alan McCoist and Neil McCann. Right, you common denominator there. So I'll go all Jock Stein on you. In those moments, Jock Stein once famously said, and I'm sure it was about the 77 Scottish Cup final with the handball, and Andy Lynch scored the winner. Jock Stein said, in these situations, the eye sees what it wants to see.
It does indeed.
This is a classic example of this, depending on your leanings or not, whatever. The eye is seeing what it wants to see. But you can see a clear push, 2 hands, by Morelos, and that's what Clancy has seen. That's what he's given it for. So I'm going back to that. In any of these situations, the eye sees what it wants to see, and your narrative plays out from that. But you and I have spoken about there's holding of the jersey by both, but at one point Morelos grabs the jersey and then pushes away. He grabs the jersey and then pushes with both hands. Nudge, shove, push, call it what you like. A push is a push. It's a foul, and a foul was correctly called.
I'm going to put this up for you, Tony. Beach Boys saying every argument has two sides. If it was against Celtic, there would be outrage. Kevin Clancy blew the whistle way too early in Beach Boys' opinion. He says both players were at it. Morelos was just stronger. VAR should have been used to check it after it. Now, we touched on this yesterday, Tony. It was a goal, then disallowed goal. So VAR did check it. VAR was asked to check it, as it always is, for that. But ultimately, and this is I think what people are still fundamentally misunderstanding, it needs to be a clear and obvious error. Whether you think it was soft, whether you think they were both at it or not, he still pushed them. Yes. So whether anyone thinks it was soft or not is irrelevant, because it was technically a foul, which is why Dermot Gallagher, by the way, I'd like to point out, just said Celtic got lucky, not that it was wrong.
Yes.
Because it's obviously an interpretation there, and when you watch the rest of the ref watch with Dermot Gallagher, he's not shy at saying if it was wrong. So he just said Celtic got lucky because it was a decision that could have gone either way. He could have allowed it, and I don't think many people would have been annoyed. But the fact that he saw the two hands out, as we discussed, and just to come back to Beach Boys, the point about VAR, as I said yesterday, VAR is never going to overturn that because it's not a mistake. It's not a clear and obvious error. It was a foul. Just because it was soft doesn't mean VAR can overturn it.
But it's the same interpretation logic that was used to discuss the handballs incidents, wasn't it? So, yeah, it's I used the word astonished, but I was astonished by that kind of reaction to that. Yeah, Edward Driver, I'm astonished too. Absolutely astonished. And I don't say that flippantly. I don't know what they really expected the SFA to say to them on that, or any clarification about
David Gillespie says the decision was pretty consistent with most of the calls. Every other call, he says Clancy made all over the pitch for fouls with the same kinds of contact. I said that yesterday. I thought he was quite card happy. As I said, Celtic get 4 yellow cards from the first 9 fouls, a lot of which I didn't think merited yellows or potentially weren't fouls. But I thought he did have a poor game. I said that yesterday. I thought he had a really bad game. Before I come on to my kind of reaction to the statements, Tony, anything else to add about either the Morelos thing or the Clancy stuff?
I just wonder what happens now, Sean, in terms of Kevin Clancy's at him. Will he be barred from Ibrox?
Well, Patrick asked that question, and I think I don't think that's an unfair question from Patrick, because Chris Sutton couldn't be guaranteed safety as a pundit. So I think that is actually a fair question, Tony, that Patrick's asking. And we know that there's a precedent set there that if Rangers complain about a referee doesn't necessarily get Ibrox games for a while. Yeah, Willie Paul.
So in that case, is there a bigger question there then? You complain about a ref, you're now picking and choosing who you want to referee your games, or you're picking your least favourite for whatever reason. I just think there's a wider issue now in terms of Clancy's safety as well. What do the SFA just say? Well, you're not refereeing Rangers until the end of the season, and also we've got a Scottish Cup semi-final coming up, Sean.
Yep.
In less than 3 weeks? Well, about 3 weeks' time.
Yeah.
What happens now? What pressure? Enormous pressure has now been heaped on the man in the middle for that game, whoever that may be. These guys don't sign up for that. They don't sign up for abuse and their personal details to be put all over the internet. You are heaping enormous pressure now on the man in the middle, whoever it's going to be, and those decisions will now come under the most intense scrutiny. And to err as human, as I said, how would you feel as a referee going into that cauldron that day? How do you play that? I just think the pressure on the whistlers, assistants and VAR officials that day is going to be utterly enormous.
You could argue it's already a thankless task, never mind throwing that kind of gasoline on it.
Become a more thankless task, Sean.
Yep.
And you know what? So who gets the gig?
No. Are you suggesting it should be an outside ref, or is it quite at that level, given those threats? Or
well, I think
is there an argument that you offer it to Kevin Clancy to kind of back your man up, that kind of thing? Or he might not want it, but
do you not see the logic in that? I know certain parts of the world, like Egypt, fly in neutral referees from other countries, don't they? Because they can't, but a lot of those referees were corrupted, weren't they, or whatever. So a lot of Scottish guys actually flew into Egypt and ref derbies. I'm not saying that will happen this time, but is it something you have to look at? Bringing guys from England, Italy, Germany, Spain, or wherever for this particular game, because Scottish referees are on a hiding to nothing now for this semi-final, regardless. And I just I don't think it would be fair to put a Scottish referee into that cauldron and to for and then subject them to the Kevin Clancy treatment if it goes awry. Let's put it that way. Well, these guys are human as well. They've got families. It must be utterly unpleasant for members of Kevin Clancy's family to see what has happened since Saturday, and to be linked to it, and to become part of it, because it's not just Kevin Clancy, it's his family now.
Peter Duffy saying that's why we need full-time professionals as officials. Now, you know where I stand on it. I still think they put the cart before the horse with VAR coming in before full-time officialdom. But let's not conflate the two. The full-time professionals as officials is an issue for refereeing standards, not referees getting abused for a poor display. That's two different things. One should never happen, and one should happen. One being full-time professionals with refereeing standards that are up to scratch. So I wouldn't want to conflate those two things. That didn't happen at the weekend because he's a part-time ref. That happened because people weren't happy and lost their rag. Just to come on, before I come on to my reaction to the statements, I want to start, Tony, with what I'll use the term false equivalence here. Of bringing up the PGMOL thing, right? Now, I think it's a false equivalence because, yes, the PGMOL, which is to uphold refereeing standards down in England, they did offer an apology to Brighton down in the Premier League, but they did that because, crucially, it was an incorrect decision. Whether anyone thinks that Morelos, I know I'm repeating myself, but whether anyone thinks that Morelos disallowal was soft or not is irrelevant to asking for an apology, because it was technically a correct decision. There was a push. So, well, the idea that a refereeing standards association would come out and say when they get something wrong is absolutely fine. See, to apply it as a precedent to this situation, to me, that's at best clutching at straws, and at worst just willfully misleading people. To me, that's the way I perceive that, Tony.
Yeah, because it's a correct decision, which is why the response to Rangers has been what it was regarding Clancy's decision. You can moan about it and be unhappy with it. You can critique it, like we have done since VAR's been brought in with numerous decisions. But I think on the main, we've had to accept it, haven't we? It's nothing.
I mean, Celtic, don't get me wrong, Celtic have contacted the SFA. Yeah. They don't do it in such a, I would say, grandstanding manner.
They've asked for clarification.
They have asked, they've asked for clarification on the way that VAR's being used. And this isn't a VAR issue. This one, this is the referee issue, because the referee gave it, and I've already explained why VAR would never overturn it, because it wasn't technically an error. But if I'm going to come to the other statements or the rest of the issues, I've already agreed that I think you're spot on about it's unacceptable. The abuse, it shouldn't have to be put through that, regards to the fact that we both think he had a really poor game. I don't think it's unfair, Tony, to suggest that, in my opinion anyway, Kevin Clancy is bearing the brunt of a frustration that's not born solely from that game of football on Saturday. I don't think it's born from a perilous sporting, financial, even social situation that the fans of one of the clubs involved in that game finds themselves in. And I think we
It's a
discussed
bigger argument then, isn't it?
Sorry?
It's a bigger argument then, isn't it?
Yeah, aye. And I think we discussed pretty much every decision in that game on the show yesterday, and you mentioned it earlier. The one that seems to be causing so much carnage is one that was technically correct.
It's the correct one.
Now, I seen a few comments mentioning this, and I already had it noted down that I wanted to bring it up, but Michael Stewart's one of my favourite pundits, right? And I know he's not everybody's cup of tea, Tony, but I do like him, and I think he nailed it for me earlier on the day. It was only about 8:30 this morning. He tweeted out saying, quoting him, "Rangers' level of entitlement is incredible. Writing letters wanting explanations and apologies for one perceived mistake. I must have missed the numerous other clubs' letters this season. St Johnstone must surely have done it after their game at Ibrox." End quote. So that's what Michael Stewart said, and that was obviously, he's referring to the St Johnstone game against Rangers, where Willie Collum gave Rangers a penalty for a disputed handball, and then sent off, I think it was Nicky Clark, and then didn't send off Ryan Jack a couple of minutes later. So I think Michael Stewart's nailed it with that word entitlement, Tony. But I also think that we were talking off air, I think there's another one you could use, and that's deflection. I think the Rangers statement, I perceive it as almost dismissive of the Clancy abuse part before launching into the several paragraphs about the Morelos disallowed goal decision. But why is what I would ask. I'll come back to what I said earlier. They're not in a good situation sporting-wise.
Yeah.
It's an increasingly worrisome one financially. And surely at some stage, you would imagine, Tony, they will have some sort of issue with their own fans socially too, given, after that game on Saturday, you had a representative of their official fan media partners blatantly calling a referee a cheat. Amid personal details getting leaked and Kevin Clancy and family receiving abusive and threatening calls to their home and different things. So I suppose I would ask again, why continue to put on what I think is a sham of a show with letters to the SFA and stuff like that? That's why I think.
Grandstanding.
Yep.
What are you hinting at? There's a phrase about stuff coming down the pipe, isn't there? Which you know, potentially further down the line. But I just think that when you use the word there was deflection.
Yep.
Yeah. And we'll keep our I think most supporters of football clubs always like to know what their rivals are doing, but I guess that's something you could keep your eye on in the future. But I just feel that there's been so much made of this to an unacceptable level, and we've spoke about it since VAR came in. It is our job to focus on Celtic, but every club has a litany of poor VAR decisions from this season, haven't they?
Yeah.
And I don't know, I can't speak for other clubs, don't know if they've written to the SFA to ask for clarification, but as you say, they haven't come out in the most public way and, stirred up kind of the supporters to actually, send abuse to referees and print their personal details and threaten them. I just think that it's is pretty abhorrent behaviour, isn't it? It's just unacceptable. It's just not what you want to see. And every club, I'm sure if there are other club supporters who are in the comment section, they can tell you other decisions that they feel have gone against their club this season, but they don't act like that. As I say, we, off the top of our head, we come up with about 10 decisions since VAR came in that we felt have gone against Celtic. We discussed them like adults, as we do. We don't enjoy them when they go against you, but it happens. So is this the weapon of deflection? You have to ask yourself, and time will tell on that, won't it, Sean?
It certainly will, and I suppose on the subject of covering Celtic, we've kind of spent a lot of 25 minutes talking about about a game something that only kind of doesn't even really involve Celtic, I suppose, anymore, because it's went beyond the game of football itself. But nonetheless, the game of football itself widened what has become known as the gap, Tony.
Yeah.
The gap, as Kevin McKenna said in the and his column that's online today, which I'll put in the comment section. Did you enjoy that one from Kevin, Tony?
I'll urge everybody to read it. It's a wonderful kind of tongue-in-cheek reference to the gap. But you have various narratives playing out about Saturday, Sean, about how the perceived better team lost, the gaps narrowed, and even today, former Rangers midfielder Barry Ferguson saying what she said before, that Michael Beale now has Ange Postecoglou's number the same way that Giovanni Brand Bronkhorst had Ange's number. He said that Michael Beale's tactics on Saturday had Celtic rattled. You know, I must be existing on a parallel universe. I really must be. And I try and be as, obdurate as I can, and I think we're pretty honest on here, and we give our opinion, but I just don't see that. I just don't see how people can come to that conclusion. And to use the word of the day, I'm kind of astonished by those kind of claims. And I see James Tavernier has also said that he's very confident about winning in the semi-final.
Yes, and actually Kevin mentions that in his piece.
Yeah.
And he points out rightly that actually if there's any of the two teams that have a right to be coming out and saying ahead of this fixture that they're confident, it's probably Celtic. But Kevin points out, that they won't do that. That's not what the kind of culture that Ange Postecoglou's fostered. They won't say that.
But it's what you've heard about every next game since Ange Postecoglou took over, and he's lost his first one and he lost the semi-final in extra time last year. But that's gonna wait till the next game. Confident that and I guess it's fine. I'm all for talking up your team and stuff, but the facts don't lie, do they? I kind of like to deal in facts. It's like we always have a kind of joke about XG, expected goals, and I say I deal in AG, actual goals. No, that's right. And I just think that sometimes reality gets skewed. But Kevin's comments about the gap are great. The gap is 12 points and 29 goals, I believe. Is that right? I
think so, aye. But Kevin, what I would say about the gap is probably not to spoil the article because it's an entertaining read, but the overarching point that Kevin's making is that, and I think he puts it this way: as for the gap, Celtic don't need to concern themselves with how large or small it is. It's enough that it simply exists, and that Rangers are absolutely obsessed by it.
Yeah, and I think since Saturday you have witnessed that narrative play out about how gaps have been narrowed. The difference between the two sides isn't that great. That remembering that Rio Hatate, who's arguably in the running for Scottish Footballer of the Year, wasn't playing, Aaron Moy wasn't fit, and a Celtic team who needlessly gave away possession for most of that first half. Yet the only goal of the game that was scored with a piece of football was the opening goal, and it came from Celtic. So, these are all facts.
That's where your XG backs you up, but Tony, that's where it reinforces your point. There was 5 goals, but you're right, only one of them was a football goal. I'll give a nod to Tavernier for his free kick, obviously, but in terms of what Ange Postecoglou was talking about and what I went on at length about yesterday, they threatened from set pieces. Celtic were better in open play, and that the stats back up what you say. That there was one quality goal in there from open play, and it was Celtic's. The rest all came from what I maintained at the time, despite the fact it was an entertaining game in the sense that there was goals, there was drama, there was all that kind of thing, there was mistakes, all of that. I still think it was a pretty low quality game, and ultimately, kind of suited Rangers more that it was a low quality game. But then, nonetheless, as I can't remember what comment it is, somebody said Celtic were a 6 out of 10, but still won the game. Do you know what I mean? So that's what happens, and that's where we come back to Kevin's the gap. And just matters that it's there.
Yeah, and we were speaking in the group chat on Saturday, and we were saying that Celtic's normal, reliable domination of the football, as Ange likes to call it, in their possession was woeful. Yeah. And we're picking out players right, left, and centre. Aaron Moy was one of them. Carter Vickers, uncharacteristically, giving the ball away. So we were having that chat and saying, wow, they need to get a grip of it at some point. And it was unsurprising when they did and scored the opening goal from it when it fell into place. So, Yeah, I urge you to read that Kevin McKenna article on the gap. It is there, and I believe there was a caller on one of the radio phoners last night who was outlining the same kind of gap to Kenny Miller, wasn't he? He was trying to sort of say that it had narrowed. And listen, wait till the next game, wait till the next game. You take nothing for granted. Rangers will win against Celtic at some point in the future. And everybody will say, see, told you, the gap's not that big. But, you know, I what will be in the semi-final. But, you know, it's now shaping up to be a powder keg fixture for all the wrong reasons. And as you said earlier, you don't need that gasoline thrown on a fixture which is, you know, highly volatile and flammable at the best of times, isn't it?
It is. I don't really know what else to add to that, to be honest, Tony. I think between yesterday and the day, and that's including the stuff off the field, I think we've pretty much covered it all. I think. Is there anything, even an individual or anything that you never got to mention yesterday that we were going to? I can't think of one off the top of my head really, but
well, the only other individual I would maybe speak about is that it seems to be a recurring theme with the Celtic fans about Joe Hart. We touched upon him briefly, but lots of people saying that now Celtic really need to step up their quest for a new goalkeeper. Now, you always get ripped into me about Joe Hart 7, and you text me off air when he made that save from Morelos and said, "There's Joe Hart 7 guaranteed." And we had a wee laugh about it. Was a good save. I expected him to make that save, but others were asking, could he have saved the header? And then they were asking about the free kick. The free kick I'll cut him some slack on because that's just a moment of real quality from James Tavernier. But the header, could he have done better? Don't know. It was a very close range header, wasn't it? And it was.
And he does do like the header down the way and stuff. It is what the
textbook. But I think lots of people are saying about the fact that he's just not commanding in that area, and maybe.
Yeah, that's what Jerry Smith's saying. He just wishes he would come off his line more. Yeah,
maybe Foster or somebody would come out and punch.
Don't get me started on Foster and coming for crosses. I know he improved. He did improve, but I remember I still had my season ticket. He was on loan his first season. Stevie Woods every single half time would be out there practicing stuff with him, kicking, catching, all that. And for 6'7", he had no confidence whatsoever at the start. He did end up better, but what I will say on the Joe Hart thing, and this always sticks in my head because James Daly took a power of abuse for it, I think, was he statistically looked at Barkas versus Hart, and we all know Barkas isn't good enough. He just couldn't save a goal, and that's fundamentally, even if he is better with his feet, and as James said, better at actually coming out and claiming. If you're not going to save a shot when it comes in, then you're just not good enough for me. Yeah. But that's where I will err on the side of Tony Haggerty and say, right, no, the stats are not telling the picture here. But I remember that sticks in my head that James did an investigation statistically, and Barkas was even better at coming and claiming than Joe Hart. Now, he doesn't often come at all. That's the thing. I think that's what Jerry's kind of talking about. It's not necessarily that he's coming and flapping. It's that it just doesn't come. Most of the time you don't get punished for it because most of the time Celtic aren't under the cost to that extent or anything. But even that's something that you've noticed as well, that he doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, even the goal that we lost in the League Cup final was very similar to the Alfredo Morelos goal that wasn't given.
Yeah,
it was a similar type goal with a cross into the box. And I don't know, the goalkeeper can come, it's through a ruck of players, but you know, I just find that whenever that happens, that whenever there's a bounce of the ball in the box, that our goalkeeper's not there, or he's getting beat with, you know, a toe poke or whatever, and it's more observations, as I say, than criticisms of him per se, but it's just kind of, you feel that with those kind of things, it seems to be happening a lot, doesn't it? It's more prevalent, or you're noticing it.
I had my reservations anyway. I think he's a net positive since he's come to Celtic. I think he's
I don't
revamped his career and also revitalised his reputation. But ultimately, I do think Celtic can do better. I think that is an area that they can improve going forward. It depends who becomes available. I remember there's a few people in here, I can't remember who it was, had suggested Kevin Kelleher down at Liverpool. I think with wages and all that, it might be beyond what Celtic can do. I'm not sure his contract situation, but he would actually be really good, I think. But it needs to be the right guy. They've got Siegrist in, who I think was always signed as a backup personally. Bain is quite happy to be the third choice or on the bench and not getting a game. And you've got the homegrown thing, national homegrown status for him. I do think that whether it's next season, because he's only 35, and for a keeper you could play another few years, but I do think that ultimately the keeper position is somewhere they need to improve. But on top of that, Tony, there's intangibles with Joe Hart in terms of his presence in the dressing room, his leadership skills. They all clearly appreciate his influence, but nonetheless, I think at some point it will have run its race.
Yeah, I'm not disputing that. I think he's been a wonderful signing for the club. He's helped that dressing room enormously. He's a big character, and he's got what it meant to play for Celtic from the get-go. And I've loved what he's brought to Celtic. It's just not a criticism of Joe Hart. As I say, they're observations, and I don't know. I just think, could he be a wee bit more domineering in the box? And everybody knows about as K-Max was saying there, he's happy with Hart's play between the post problems, ability to play with the ball at his feet. That's happened. Everybody goes back to that Ibrox moment. When Celtic were 1-0 ahead, Ibrox after half an hour in the 2 each game. I agree with what he says, Kevin, so and that kind of gave Rangers a bit of impetus, and they took that for the last 10 minutes of the half, and then the opening 15 minutes of the second, and Celtic lost their way a wee bit, and it all came from that, because Celtic, for that first half an hour in that January game at Ibrox, where their distribution was on point, unlike Saturday, when their distribution wasn't on point. And they were well in command of that game until that moment. So, as I say, I think moving forward, as you've said, it's an issue that has to be confronted and addressed. He's played well this season, and you keep saying to me he's not had anything to do. So
that's just in individual games. He's obviously had stuff to do, but aye.
But so I mean that was because I think we did cover mostly everything yesterday, didn't we?
I think we did. I'm going to put this up just while we're on the subject of keepers. Andrew Galea saying Celtic are obviously looking to bring in a keeper with Scott Bain going. It might be a young keeper with Hart playing one more season. You've got Toby Owulayemi on loan at Cork City. We need to see how he gets on. Connor Hazard will be going, his contract's up. But Scott Bain's contract's not up until next summer. And the only report I've seen and read suggesting that Celtic might be accepting a bid or letting them go sooner than that, it was Football Insider. So take from that what you will.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't count the chickens on being going yet. I think he's quite happy being third choice. And I think it's almost irrelevant to the conversation anyway, in a sense, because if he's not going to compete, which he isn't, then you're probably talking more about the other two, Hart and Siegrist. Would one of them be going? What's the long-term plan with Toby Owulayemi? Would it be an outsider coming in? Would it be a new keeper? All that kind of stuff. I actually think Scott Bain's kind of a non-factor in it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, another comment I put up, and probably should have addressed it well, but it's not on goalkeepers, about the front three, Jota, Maeda and Kyogo. And they were talking about the fact that they chased down everything on Saturday. And that was a feature that, second and third goal come from Jota being alert and switched on, not giving it up. And as much as Celtic weren't great in an attacking sense where it wasn't free-flowing and everything came off, they still did enough to force mistakes. And Jota in particular of this moment is putting in some shift in that regard. It's usually Maeda's domain, and Kyogo likes to occupy defenders by being switched on and making quick runs and stuff like that. But Jota recently, he won the ball back recently and shunted it on for somebody to score. I think what game was it, Hearts? If memory serves right, and just to be alert and he stood there and everybody claimed a handball against. Didn't hit him in the hand, but breaks from him to Kyogo. He scores, and then he's alert to switch on to the pass, waiver back pass from John Souttar. And a lot of players might have, as I say, just they wanted to go down in that instant, Sean. Wait for contact and go, but quick thinking, quick brain, quick feet. But just the quick thinking and the way that Celtic played on Saturday with those three who weren't always involved in the game, but they kind of were. if you get what I mean, because they were always chasing, harrying and shutting down, and that work ethic. And I think that's worth a mention as well, because you can be involved in the game without being on the ball, if you get what I mean.
No, I know, and I think that's the least that they expect. Ange Postecoglou expects from his players. And I think Jota mentioned that after the game, that even when they're maybe not playing as well, they still don't stop. I think he said we didn't stop and we still get the win. But I said that yesterday. I mean, with the Jota's role in the second goal and the third goal, to not accept the fact that it's going to go out for a corner, or even just let Davis kind of rectify his mistake, because it was pretty much on the byline. He simply makes sure he gets himself involved, and it ends up hitting him, dropping to Kyogo. And then with the third goal, you're right, somebody might have went down, a different player might have went down. He only dies for getting past and putting it in the goal. But even that, I said yesterday, it's kind of doing him a disservice just to talk about the mistake from the Rangers' point of view, because I think that's what some people are doing. Because to have the quickness of thought to compute what's about to happen, take the risk that it is going to happen, and then capitalise on it and put it in as if it was just a routine pass through rather than a mistake. The speed of thought, as I said, made Alan McGregor look every inch the 41-year-old. So
and one of the commenters also said, if you check Kyogo out, is Jota.
Yes, he said that yesterday.
He's running the occupied Tavernier, so Tavernier
blocking the passing lane.
So
it's all part of it. It's all part of it.
Yeah, but that's only something that I noticed when I watched it back 2 or 3 times. Because Kyogo just immediately makes a dap for Tavernier. So it's all in the grand plan, as they say, Sean, isn't it?
And I think if you're going to mention the effort off the ball and stuff, I'll give a nod again to Stuart Ross's piece on Matt O'Reilly from yesterday. Because Stuart rightly pointed out that Matt O'Reilly set a new Celtic record this season for pressing in that game. So I think a welcome return to the starting fold. I know he was in the starting lineup the last game as well, but a nice timed return to a decent and a good performance from Matt O'Reilly.
Yeah, without a doubt. You know my thoughts on Matt O'Reilly. I love him. I think he's an absolute baller. And had he really lost his way recently? I don't know, you could argue that.
I think a slight dip over, I think people were overreacting in terms of the extent to which, because it was also getting kind of compared with the rise of Moy at the same time. It wasn't necessarily that O'Reilly just dropped. It was kind of like they were there and maybe O'Reilly went there and Moy went up because he was on form. But with Matt O'Reilly, we've watched Lyrical a bit on here many a time. Nobody will be surprised, but I mean, I still think he'll break Kieran Tierney's Scottish transfer record at some point, with all the checks that I say, that all the ticks that he gets for a transfer profile, the age, the homegrown thing, if it's an English team, all that. I think, as I said yesterday, his assist for the first goal keeps my tip for top creator ticking over nicely. He needs to score a few more goals, but that's about it.
Well, he's just hitting form again, isn't he? So I'm sure he'll rectify that. Got a couple of goals in the closing games of last season, didn't he? I'm thinking in the 7-0 win against St Johnstone, got a couple of that day, didn't he? In that over 40 pass move, but he ran out of options, so just stuck in the top corner, didn't he? You know what I mean? So but no, it's a welcome return to form, and also I hope he takes that confidence now into the games that are left, because he will undoubtedly play his part, won't he?
I'm going to, before we wrap it up, Tony, just a random wee question from Rab here. Who's your 3 starting midfielders at the moment? He would say Callum McGregor, Reo Hatate are certain, and he's swaying towards Tomoki Iwata for the third spot. You know how much I went on pre-season about the trio of McGregor, Hatate, O'Reilly. Obviously, Aaron Moy has made that a discussion now, but I don't think Iwata's made it a discussion yet. No,
he hasn't. He might well do moving forward, but I think you're still permanent 3 from 4, aren't you?
Yeah.
Callum, Hatate and Moy, or Callum, Hatate and O'Reilly.
Yeah.
I think, and I think that was borne out on Saturday when you had a clearly not 100% fit Moy, who was uncharacteristically slack with his distribution and had a poor game by his high bar standards, and Matt O'Reilly, who decided to go back to the Matt O'Reilly of old and influence the game, as Stuart Ross said, in more ways than one, both on and off the ball. So, but you cannot say that Celtic didn't miss Hatate.
No, they did. I know.
They missed
I
him.
think part of that was because Moy was off it. I think you've got to say, I think somebody put it in the comments as well. What does it say about David Turnbull when Aaron Moy's clearly not quite there, but he gets picked to start over him? He was also picked to start over Iwata, but I wouldn't read too much into that either because Iwata's at a different stage of his Celtic career anyway. I think that was more a let's get McGregor back at the 6 than anything else. But with Moy over Turnbull with that, I think Turnbull's just this season when everybody's fit, and he is still contributing Turnbull when it comes to making a tangible contribution when he comes on. But ultimately, I agree with you. I think it's 3 from 4 at the moment, and that's no disrespect to Moki Iwata because I think at some point he will make it a discussion. But right now, to me, McGregor, Hatate, and then either Moy or O'Reilly, depending who's been playing the better, get into it. Really,
yes, of course. And Turnbull has to accept that he's going to be a bit part player for the foreseeable future, unless he either wants to move on or he decides to sign a new contract and fight for his place.
Well, that's the thing. His contract's going to have a year to run in a matter of a month and a half, 2 months, end of June. So
correct. Well, that's another half of football that we've covered, Sean. 46 minutes. I think we did rather well considering the subject and topic matter there, but hope you guys have enjoyed it. Thanks for your comments. You kept them coming in. You kept us flicking them up and talking about various stuff. Kevin Clancy being the biggest topic of the day. But thank you for your contributions and thank you for subscribing to the Celtic Way website. If you haven't done it already, enjoyed this show, then why not hit that button and subscribe to the Celtic Way website and support top quality journalism covering the club you love, and it'll cost you £2 for 2 months of unlimited access to everything that's written on the site. It's all for the click of a button. www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. That's www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. And we also say thank you to SENECA. As everybody knows, the Celtic Way morning briefing is now sponsored by SENECA Medical Group. SENECA are the #1 hair transplant company in Europe, and they offer innovative hair restoration treatments. And you can find out more about SENECA via the links in the description of this video. Sean, all I can say is thank you very much. Have a terrific Tuesday. Fantastic contribution as always, Sean. Cheers and thank you guys. Take care and we'll see you all tomorrow.
Cheers guys. Cheers Tony.